On this Saturday night, wildfire worries. The flames pushing across the prairies, forcing many to flee their homes.
Trying to come to grips with the very real reality that our home may not be there.
How communities are stepping up to help evacuees. A new tariff threat from Donald Trump. The potential impact on Canada's critical steel industry. And the U.S. president revokes legal status for hundreds of thousands of migrants. Many now living in fear of an ICE ambush and immediate deportation. And ratifying its own constitution.
It feels amazing. First thing I thought about this morning when I woke up was the Constitution.
How BC's Heiltsuk Nation is entering a new era of self-governance.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Chris Galis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Across the prairies tonight, more communities are being told to evacuate immediately with the aggressive start to the wildfire season in Manitoba, Saskatchewan and Alberta. The latest numbers show over 620,000 hectares have been scorched. That's an area bigger than the size of Prince Edward Island. It's 40% more ground lost than the 10-year average, and it's only just the start of the season. The wildfires are creating a lot of smoke, which is easily visible from space as these satellite shots show. The biggest fire in terms of area is in Saskatchewan. We'll get to that one in a moment, but we want to start tonight in Manitoba, where residents in several northern towns are being ordered out. Hersh Singh begins our coverage tonight.
As northern Manitoba battles one of the worst wildfires in recent memory, residents are trying to come to terms with what the future might hold for them.
We've gone through a range of emotions and settings and sleeping arrangements, and we're just trying to stay positive while also trying to come to grips with the very real reality that our home may not be there.
Noelle Drimmy, a school teacher in Flin Flon, was forced to evacuate her house with her husband and 2 kids.
I was taking, graduation photos for some of the local high school students at the time. And, we're trying to stay really cheery and peppy about graduation while also having this sort of undertone of gloom and doom right outside the school.
Early on Saturday, the city of Flin Flon reported no structural fires so far, but the situation remains tense. Close to Flin Flon, Cranberry Portage has now implemented a mandatory evacuation. But Manitobans are coming together in a time of need. Pegwis, a community that has had to evacuate due to floods and wildfires in the past, is now accepting evacuees.
This was a natural choice, an obvious choice for us to make. Having gone through similar things, not to the degree I think that Cross Lake First Nation is experiencing at the moment and other First Nations.
Pegwis currently has about 150 evacuees, and they expect more to join them from the north as people continue to pick up their essentials and leave home.
We lost a son about 4 years ago, so we brought his ashes with us. That was very important to make sure he was, part of everything.
Remy says she's trying not to think about the stuff that was left behind.
But at the end of the day, they are just things, right? Like my most important, my family is here. They're the most important thing, and they're safe and they're with me, and that's all I can hope for. So,
Hersh Singh, Global News, Winnipeg.
In Saskatchewan, crews are battling more than a dozen active wildfires days after Premier Scott Moe declared a province-wide state of emergency. The largest is about 300,000 hectares. That's 3,000 square kilometers. And as Gates Guarin reports, the province is in dire need of aid as resources are stretched thin.
The fight against several out-of-control wildfires continues in Saskatchewan. Premier Scott Moe joining officials with the province's public safety agency to provide an update on the situation as it unfolds in real time.
We cannot manage and handle a single other fire.
The SPSA says crews on the ground and air are working around the clock to contain active fires with the support of local municipalities like Candle Lake.
We now have a very good open communication line. I truly appreciate that, and I thank them for that.
Authorities placing road restrictions and putting fire guards in place in an effort to contain the fire should it make its way closer to the community. Crews from Nova Scotia and the Northwest Territories now on the ground, ready to assist.
If we end up in situations similar to what we are in now, where provinces are experiencing a high fire load, they can put in a request for other provinces to provide support.
The federal government has also committed supports to the province, awaiting a call from the safety agency to mobilize.
The bottom line, the messages from our Prime Minister, Saskatchewan's important. All we can do to help, we're ready to go.
But neither Moe or the SPSA have made the call to the feds for additional resources, instead relying on other provinces or U.S. states for help.
It's about the resource that you actually require at that point in time. If the federal government had, traditionally doesn't have water bombing support, if they did, we would be requesting that at this point, but we're not.
Moe says the next 4 to 7 days are critical, hoping a shift in weather will provide favorable conditions in order to fight the ongoing fires. Gates Guarin, Global News, Saskatoon.
And in Alberta tonight, an aggressive start to the fire season is also forcing more people to flee their communities there. In Yellowhead County, west of Edmonton, an out-of-control wildfire triggered evacuation orders last night for the communities of Mercole and Robb. That's on top of evacuation orders issued Thursday for the hamlet of Piers. Those orders were expanded last night after a nearby fire exploded to over 1,400 hectares. And up north in Chipewyan Lake, a group of firefighters who were trapped by fires there yesterday have since been able to leave safely. Officials are now working to assess the damage there.
We do not know the extent of structure damage or loss in the community at the moment. We can only confirm that the water treatment plant has been lost.
There are more than 50 active fires throughout Alberta right now, more than 30 of them out of control. Let's head over to the Weather Center now, where meteorologist Yvonne Schell has more details about how these fires are behaving and what the weather outlook is like. Yvonne.
Chris, significant wildfires continue to impact the Prairie provinces. Not much of a relief in the forecast. Our fire danger rating sitting at extreme for Alberta and leading in towards Saskatchewan, and that'll continue in towards our Sunday and into early next week with hot and dry conditions. Now, there is a cold front that we're tracking, bringing active weather for central Alberta for the early evening hours, so the risk of thunderstorms. It is bringing some precipitation, but unfortunately, it'll be north of the fires. Some communities will see a relief, but near the fires, we've got little precipitation and very windy conditions. Upwards of 30 millimeters will be for the extreme north of Alberta and leading in towards Saskatchewan as well. Smoky skies. We do have a special weather statement for the areas that are in gray for the air quality. In pink is where we have the warnings. So we've got poor air quality, reduced visibility. Those with respiratory issues want to try and limit the amount of time spent outdoors. We are tracking the winds tomorrow with this frontal system, and the big weather story, it'll pick up gusts. It'll shift to more of a northwesterly wind for Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And we could see some of those winds ranging between 50 and a few spots up to 70 kilometers per hour. And those could fan some of the flames in towards the central and southern regions of the province. Now, with the frontal system, the temperatures are going to drop off into the low 20s for Saskatchewan. But the concern will be for Manitoba. We'll still see it soaring into the upper 20s, and a few spots will be into the low 30s. So for Sunday, the big concern will be very windy conditions into the Prairie provinces and the heat in towards Manitoba. Chris?
Meteorologist Yvonne Schell, thank you. Canada's steel and aluminum producers are reacting to another recent tariff threat from Donald Trump. The U.S. president is promising to double import fees on foreign supply, which could reach 50% as soon as Wednesday. Mackenzie Gray reports on the fallout here at home.
I'd like to present this to a Hall of Fame president. Please accept it.
The president becoming an honorary Pittsburgh Steeler, but it's U.S. steel workers that Donald Trump says he's trying to save.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry.
That plan would add further uncertainty for Canadian steel and aluminum producers, who Trump has also threatened to double tariffs on.
I expect, as a result of 50% tariffs, we would see dramatic changes in our shipping volumes to the United States. It's quite possible that all shipments will stop.
Replacing Canadian supplies, easier said than done for key American industries like aerospace and defense, with Canada as the largest steel and aluminum supplier to the U.S. Good to see you. Prime Minister Mark Carney spent much of the campaign pushing back against Trump's tariffs, but his office had no comment on the latest developments, instead leaving it to the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who tweeted he's taken note of what Trump has said and promised to defend workers and communities. Trump has promised the tariffs would come in on June 4th, but he hasn't signed anything to make that official, which could lead to a movie we saw back in March.
He has made the decision to add a 25% tariff. So now steel and aluminum tariffs will come into effect tomorrow at the rate of 50%.
The administration ended up quickly backing down before those additional tariffs came into force, but the constant threats underscore the chaos that is rapidly hurting Canadian businesses.
25% is sort of a slow decline. 50%, it'll be a dramatic drop.
What the Carney government would do specifically in response to increased tariffs isn't clear, Chris. A change of tone from the Trudeau government that threatened and imposed reciprocal tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. Despite the new steel and aluminum threat, there are some in Washington who have seen signs of progress in dealing with the Trump administration. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson spoke to a Canadian insider who's been at the heart of some of these negotiations for weeks. Mercedes.
Chris, Ontario's trade representative in Washington, D.C., David Patterson, has been a key player behind the scenes from the early days, back when Ontario Premier Doug Ford was the one leading the national charge to deal with the White House as Donald Trump geared up on tariffs. Patterson has been in endless insider meetings where he has done everything from negotiating with Republicans to talking to the Canadian federal government. This week he told the West Bloc he thinks progress with the United States is just around the corner. He hopes that by the G7 in Kananaskis, which is just a couple of weeks away, there could be significant developments around reducing tariffs and negotiating a new trade agreement with the United States. Of course, signing that would be a ways off, but he seems to believe that that progress is on the horizon. He also says now is the time for Canada to negotiate directly with the U.S., a different approach from how we've previously done things with NAFTA or CUSMA agreements, which involved Mexico too.
We have to remember that Trump is not finished. He's been talking about doing additional tariffs in areas like pharmaceutical, in areas like lumber. And so what we'd like to do is protect ourselves against some of those going forward as well.
Thank you, Mercedes. And you can, of course, watch the entire interview with David Patterson tomorrow morning on the West Bloc right here on Global.
Hey, solidarity!
Postal workers in Toronto are sending a message to the federal government tonight to stay out of their contract negotiations. Canada Post is asking Ottawa to force the workers who are in a legal strike position to vote on its latest offer. That offer includes a signing bonus as well as an end to mandatory overtime. The workers say it shouldn't be up to the government to force their hand. They're vowing to continue their fight with the Crown Corporation, which has been going on since November of 2023. A terrifying crackdown on undocumented immigrants and how America's top court is allowing that to continue when Global National returns. A U.S. Supreme Court ruling allows U.S. President Trump to ramp up his nationwide immigration crackdown. Temporary protection status is gone for more than 500,000 migrants from Latin America and the Caribbean. Candace Cole shows us the agonizing results for migrant families torn apart by deportation squads.
Hundreds of thousands of migrants are now living in fear as the Supreme Court allows President Trump to end temporary protective status for migrants from Haiti, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. The decision comes as the Department of Homeland Security ramps up deportation efforts targeting migrants as they arrive for their court hearings.
It makes everybody be on edge.
This tactic by DHS is happening at courthouses around the country, according to immigration advocates. Such was the case with 20-year-old Bronx high school student Dylan Lopez Contreras, a Venezuelan asylum seeker arrested by ICE during a routine court hearing in New York City.
Dylan is neither a criminal nor a dangerous person.
person. That's right. He's the exact opposite of how they try to paint the immigrant community.
And in Texas, mothers being captured by ICE outside of a courthouse in San Antonio. This woman's husband says his wife has no criminal record.
We're requesting a merits hearing, and the judge declined to set a merits hearing because DHS asked for the case to be dismissed and the client to be ordered removed, saying that it was not in the government's interest to hear a full case.
According to recent reporting by NBC, ICE deported over 17,000 people in April, up 50% from February. But that figure falls well short of the, quote, millions Trump has promised to deport from the U.S. and lags far behind the record 430,000 people who were deported in a single year during the Obama administration. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
The death toll from sudden and intense flash floods in Nigeria rose to at least 151 today. A small moment of celebration as a stranded woman and her baby were saved from the rushing floodwaters. The torrential downpour that started on Thursday has affected at least 500 households and left more than 3,000 people displaced. In southern China, an evacuated building collapsed into a raging river after heavy rain caused flash flooding there. Authorities went door to door overnight, telling people to leave low-lying areas. Chinese state media says there are no reports of casualties. Just ahead, an historic moment for the Heiltsuk Nation, putting to paper what it has known for millennia. Following decades of consultation and development, British Columbia's Heiltsuk Nation has now ratified and adopted its written constitution, formalizing the process Friday with a ceremonial feast which included First Nations leaders and delegates from around the province. Global's Paul Johnson was there for what's being called a monumental day in the nation's history.
If you want to know the story of the Heiltsuk people, a good place to start is the place where they come from, the vast and stunning archipelago of British Columbia's central coast, where they thrived for 14,000 years.
Our people have lived here and established systems of governance and laws, and that all abruptly changed.
Colonialism brought a series of disasters for the Heiltsuk, a smallpox epidemic that killed 2/3 of them, loss of land, and decimation of the salmon and herring that sustained them. But if they survived, there was one thing maybe they could bring back: their tradition of governing themselves.
Our Constitution is now in full force.
It feels amazing. First thing I thought about this morning when I woke up was the Constitution.
In a remarkable ceremony in their big house in Bella Bella, Heiltsuk leaders proclaimed their new constitution, which will integrate the knowledge and authority of the hereditary chiefs and matriarchs into their governing structure. Traditions that had been stripped away from them by the Indian Act.
For too long, there have been outside forces that have spoken on our behalf.
So as they renew their government, they're also rebuilding their community. Here are some lots they've cleared on the reserve for new housing. Their leaders are talking about new business ventures like the eco-resort lodge that they own.
We're reversing that trend of moving away from being wards of the government to be self-determining.
Which was their natural state for many centuries. For proof of that, we traveled to an abandoned village where high on a cliff face is a series of paintings left by their ancestors. No surprise that the Heiltsuk have never given up on their territory. In Bella Bella, Paul Johnson, Global News.
Up next, the Canadian baking superstars putting a new twist on delicious South Asian treats. As Asian Heritage Month comes to a close, a story about tradition and transformation. Two bakers from BC are blending the flavors of their culture with the creativity of a new generation. Neetu Garcha shows us their recipe for success.
A flavor that I grew up with, and I know a lot of South Asians grow up with.
In this Surrey, British Columbia kitchen, a baker's expression of her heritage takes the shape of ras malai, a South Asian classic reimagined as a cake.
It's like kind of like these ricotta balls. It has like the flavors of pistachio, rose, cardamom.
Ravina Oberoi is the owner of this bake shop and a finalist on this season of Food Network's Spring Baking Championship.
I am Punjabi, and my mom, growing up, her favorite dessert to make was kind of like an Indian ice cream. It's called kulfi.
Her journey started in childhood with a love of eating and baking treats with her family. Oberoi dropped her career as a childcare worker, emptied her bank account, and moved to Paris for pastry school in 2016. And she recently launched a new venture, protein gummy candies.
It's not just making cakes, it's about that passion and succeeding on a national stage with something like a creative field like baking. I think that just fosters the why even more of how representation matters.
It's really delicious.
And for baker Jujar Maan, seeing Oberoi's success made the space feel possible for him.
I was really inspired by her journey.
Maan won Netflix's Is It Cake Holiday Edition.
A Jujar! Growing up as a kid, I never saw someone like me. So, being there, representing my culture and my community, and winning was just amazing.
And today, his bake shop specializes in Indian fusion treats.
I am so inspired by my culture, and I love integrating, nostalgic flavors, tastes, and textures in all my baked goods.
Behind the sweetness is a deeper purpose, baking as a form of cultural storytelling and connection.
These young people who have taken food to this level are still attached to that idea of identity and how food defines who we are.
These kitchens are more than businesses. They're spaces where the past meets the present and tradition rises into something new. With these two bakers blending memory and imagination, one creation at a time. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Surrey, BC.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Chris Galis. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Victoria, BC, the Royal Canadian Legion in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and Fredericton, New Brunswick. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. Have a great night.